The phone rings at 2:17 p.m. It's a strange time when the shadow of uncertainty falls over everything you've ever considered important. I see the screen, and it bursts. This is the moment when the whole world begins to shake from the last vibration. A phone call is like a thunderclap, and now my world is divided in half. Before and after I heard this word, death. A deadly short word that comes into life like a heavy lightning bolt. "This is your mother," Uncle Robert's voice pierces my consciousness, breaks it like crystal ringing in the void. He had never said that before. At 65, his voice faltered. I've never heard him like this. Further, the words lose all meaning. Heart attack. They are working on it at St. Mary's Hospital. My fingers are getting numb. The coffee cup slides across the table, and despite my frantic movement to stop the fall, it hits the tile. First there was silence, then the sound of breaking porcelain, sharp as pain. Coffee, this dark liquid, is spreading, and the moment I see it slowly filling the space, like blood on a white floor, I feel like I'm losing control myself. Tom. My voice comes out, but it doesn't sound the way I wanted it to. It echoes through the house, our big house, and for a moment it seems that its huge walls absorb it, preventing it from falling. He appears in the doorway of his office, with wireless headphones ruthlessly embedded in his ears. His face is covered with irritation, which is familiar to me. For 23 years I've been trying to figure out how to live with it, but here it is again. "I'm in touch," he says softly, although I know that all he hears right now is the sound of his own thoughts, fragments of them. I can feel my pain overriding everything else. I know that right now I need his word, his look, but he doesn't care. "I have a Peterson merger meeting in 30 minutes. Can't you take an Uber?" He has not yet managed to utter the last phrase, as my patience begins to break, like an old armchair that has long outlived its time. Coffee, like the liquid of life, seeps into the lines between the tiles, creating patterns, little brown rivers that remind me of the veins on my mother's hands. She's dying. I say it clearly, with such a desperate even tone that he seems to hear me, but does not perceive me. All he's worried about is the merger meeting. "Don't be dramatic, Vanessa, your mom has always been as healthy as a horse." His words, that familiar, cold, dismissive exhalation, torment me. I need to get out of this false reality, but he doesn't see, doesn't understand, and I feel something important clicking inside me. Maybe this is the last thread of my patience, or something else that doesn't matter. I grab the keys, my hands are shaking, and the coffee remains lying on the floor, as a silent testimony, as a modern installation of my ruined day. I go out, and every minute seems infinitely long. I drive to St. Mary's Church, not noticing how the red light is flashing and how the phone is buzzing. He doesn't stop ringing, Aunt Margaret, Emily, Uncle Robert, but I can't answer. I can't be in two worlds at the same time. I can't separate myself, my soul, and this creepy, cold concrete parking lot. My mother is dying and the world will burn down, but I can't go back. Tom's face appears on the screen. He's probably calling to ask about dinner plans or to complain about an appointment. I don't answer. I don't want to hear his voice now. I don't want to delve into his world, where all questions are just convenience and minor worries. "Shut up," I whisper, looking at the silent phone, as if this will help plug the void it leaves in my life. Emily is already on her way. I hear this quiet, as if careless message from Uncle Robert, and somehow it immediately becomes clearer. Emily was in class when Margaret approached her, drawing attention to the morning's incidents. I nod, but it all seems far away. Distant, like the last 23 years of marriage. In those 23 years, he didn't bother to take me to my mother's deathbed. My thoughts shrink like a stone in my chest. Mom was always right. She always said it wasn't too late to start over, but maybe I'd already missed the chance. Emily burst through the emergency room doors like a whirlwind. Her dark hair was disheveled, mascara smeared under her eyes, and for a moment I thought she looked like me at her age. There's so much in common that I can barely breathe. "Mom." She bumps into me, and I hold my breath, inhaling the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, which takes me back in time for a moment. I got here as soon as I could, she reassures me, but her voice is still full of tension. Is that Grandma? What is it? She asks, and I shake my head, and her hand on my shoulder becomes heavy, as if the world itself is pressing down on us. She stiffens and pulls away, as if I should have been ready for this moment. Look at me. Where's Dad? Her question hangs between us like a barbed wire. I barely have time to open my mouth to reply when Aunt Margaret comes out of the hallway. Her face was haggard, and her skin had become so pale that even the light in the hospital corridor seemed dimmer. She takes one look at us, and her hands open as if it were a last gesture of comfort, but Emily walks slowly towards her, hesitating, looking at me again. He had a meeting, I say quietly, looking at the phone screen, where Tom's message is ready to light up. Merging with Peterson, I add, as if it makes any difference. An expression of confusion hits Emily's face, which immediately changes to understanding, and then to something heavier. I can feel this familiar feeling, already experienced many times, filling her chest: an empty chair at the prom, missed birthdays, endless excuses for his work, which has always been more important. Of course he did, she says, almost without a voice, turning to accept Aunt Margaret's hug. Uncle Robert's hand finds my shoulder. The doctor needs to fill out some paperwork, he says softly, his words as a reminder that I can't go back anymore. Why don't you let me figure it out? I nod, but the thanks I have to express seem impossible, like trying to solve complex equations when you're drowning. My phone buzzes again, and Tom's screen lights up like a bright lightning bolt crashing into the gray darkness. The meeting with your mom was delayed. I'm ordering food for dinner. Emily reads the message over my shoulder, and makes a sound that's between half laughing and half sobbing. Really? Grandma just died, and he's asking about dinner? I start to answer, but she interrupts me. No, Mom, don't defend him, not this time. She runs her fingers through her tangled hair, making a gesture like her father's. Responding to her gentle suggestions about therapy or separation, my phone buzzes again, and another message from Tom flashes on the screen. Should I wait for dinner for you? His words sound like a noose around his neck, as if it's the only thing he can think about at the moment when the world is collapsing around me. Emily does it again, that sound, which is more like an expression of pure disgust, like a punch in the face. She grabs my phone, and before I can stop her, she quickly types a reply without thinking. Emily, don't. I start, but she's already handing me back the phone, not letting me finish. Someone should have told him that I read her answer, she says, her voice as smooth as a knife blade. Mom just died, don't wait, it's better not to wait at all. I look at the screen and see 3 dots appear in place of the text, indicating that Tom is typing, but they disappear as quickly as they appeared. Again they appear, disappear, and then one short message appears. We'll discuss this when you get home. Anger rose in me, but in its place there was already an icy void. He didn't even bother to really worry. He's talking about dinner when his wife loses her mother. We'll discuss the relationship, I say out loud, and Emily responds by reaching out to calm me down, raising her voice. Okay, she replies, not hiding her disappointment. We'll discuss a lot when I get home. Let's start with the divorce papers. The words sound like a sentence. Lower your voice, dear, Aunt Margaret says, but her look of approval says something else. The nurse approaches with a tablet in her hand. Mrs. Mitchell, she begins, we need to discuss arrangements. This word, arrangements, hits me like a physical pressure on my chest. Arrangements? My mother is dead, and my husband is taking care of some kind of dinner, something completely absurd. It threatens to overwhelm me, to engulf me, but suddenly I feel the hardness in Emily's hand. I'll help, she says firmly, not letting me back down. She takes my hand, and there is something in her words, in her confidence, that gives me strength. We don't need him for that. We follow the nurse, and I understand that she is right. We can handle it. And perhaps at this moment I realize that we never uttered the last words of my mother, the words that she left me as a will. The echo in my head is like a quiet whisper, it's never too late to start over, darling, It's never too late to demand more. I squeeze Emily's hand, feel the strength of her confidence transfer to me, and for a moment I become stronger than I was before. When I come home, I know that Tom will want to discuss the relationship. Okay, so be it. We'll discuss a lot, starting with the divorce papers, and I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not even afraid of what I might lose, because I know, it wasn't me, but he was the one who lost everything. The funeral home smells of artificial flowers and hidden secrets. I'm sitting at a mahogany table with my mom's life insurance documents in front of me. In the silence full of the rustle of paper, I stare at them, unable to concentrate. The funeral director mumbles something about payment options, but somehow his words don't reach me. There's something wrong with the numbers. There's something wrong with this world, with this reality that I had to accept. But my grief-stricken brain can't quite understand what Mrs. Mitchell is saying. She holds out another form across the table. We will need the initial payment today. The information my husband provided on the policy seems to contain inconsistencies. Inconsistencies. The word falls into my mouth like a cold stone. A policy that expired 3 months ago. It's impossible. My mother couldn't let that happen. She never missed such things. He answers on the first ring. A sharp thought flashes in my head, like an ice knife. The life insurance period has expired. I am speaking without preamble, without hints. Tom stole money, not only from me, but also from Mom. There is a long, almost painful interval of silence. His voice, barely audible, interrupts me, but I feel that he doesn't believe me. My office is now, I say, but I can't gather my thoughts. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting in front of my uncle's desk, who is opening financial reports on his computer without looking up. He clicks on the screens quickly, and I can hear his breathing getting heavy. Jesus Christ, he mutters, staring at the monitor. Vanessa, this is much deeper than you think. He's looking for something, scrolling through the numbers. The share of equity in the house depends on your pension. Emily's college foundation accounts. He stops talking, and every word he says hits me like a physical blow. How much money he stole, how much he deprived us of. The initial estimate is approaching 700,000. My head is spinning, and the world seems to be spinning around me, not giving me a foothold. It's impossible. I can barely speak. Someone must have noticed it. The bank. Tom works in the financial sector. He knows how to hide his tracks. Uncle Robert pauses, as if words can't find a way out. Robert's voice is getting harder, as if he's been bleeding out of you for years, I feel, but I can't stop. I can't think about what's going on. My phone is buzzing. His face appears on the screen, and next to it is the text, "Where are you? We need to discuss funeral arrangements." I can't help but laugh. He, for all his false politeness, wants to discuss funeral arrangements when he stole money from my mother. To discuss the arrangements. Arrangements. It's funny and bitter at the same time. I am not responding to the message. Don't answer, Uncle Robert says sharply. We need to be careful about this. He pauses, then calmly adds, I'll call Sarah Chan, your criminal defense lawyer friend. We're going to need it. He nods, and his expression becomes more determined. But before we do that, we need to secure what's left. Do you have any accounts that he can't access? I nod, trying to imagine what else is left that I can keep. How are we going to deal with someone who was there, who built his whole life on lies? I'm trying to reply to another message from Tom. He writes about the mess with the coffee, as always, in his usual style. Maria took it away. Please don't forget that we're having dinner with the Petersons tonight. As if that's the most important thing. It's like I just have to go back to my usual role, smile, play, forget what's going on. But something clicks inside me. A clicking sound like the cracking of broken bones. I want him destroyed. And I say this, surprised by how calm my voice sounds. Not just a divorce-destroyed one, I say, almost without emotion. It needs to be destroyed. Uncle Robert studies me, His gaze lingers on me for a long time, as if he wants to understand what I intend to do. He'll think he's in control of the situation, he says without looking up from the keyboard. But we will collect the evidence. We will make sure that he cannot escape responsibility. He's typing on his computer, and I can feel his determination seeping into me. Suddenly it becomes clear to me that I can act. I can fight. I can feel my mother's words, her always calm voice, coming back to me. She said, "You are stronger than you think." These are not just words. It's true. Tom continues, "Emily is thinking about going to law school, following in your footsteps. John Peterson is a smart girl. The firm is always looking for fresh talent." He says this in the same tone that he always emphasizes his good intentions, as if he is trying to imperceptibly manipulate my perception, as if this could replace everything else. My phone vibrates in my lap. A message from Sarah Chan Documents, "Ready meeting with Uncle Robert tomorrow at 9 a.m. "I'm sorry," I'm mumbling, staring at the screen. "We need to check the dessert in the kitchen." I get up, leaving everything behind, and walk to the counter, taking a deep breath. The tiramisu of the catering company lies perfectly on a silver tray, the perfect touch for this theater. Another performance in this complex charade in which I play my part. Sandra Peterson is standing in the doorway, and her expression is strange. She has an intention, but it freezes when she sees me. "I'm fine," I say automatically. Her gaze seems to slide over me without stopping, but I know what she sees. She comes closer, her voice getting quieter. "Is that why you're here?" Her eyes look strangely askance, and I recognize that look. I wore it myself when everything was still fine. She strokes her expensive blouse, her fingers gently smoothing the fabric as if trying to regain control. "You know, my first husband was a gambler. I also lost everything before I caught the signs. There are always these signs, aren't there? We just prefer not to see them." Tiramisu blurs in front of my eyes, and tears come threatening to break through. She notices this, but only smiles sadly. "How are you?" Her words are barely distinguishable. "No," I answer, but it seems to me that I can't believe my words. Sandra smiles softly, but her gaze is still full of compassion. "Sad, huh?" she adds, and at that moment Tom continues to check his phone under the table. A slight tremor in his hands, his charm does not save. Sandra takes something out of her pocket, a business card. "When you're ready, call this lawyer. The best divorce lawyer in the state." She glances at Tom, and then looks back at me, understanding everything without words. I'm silent, but her gesture is like a lever that started a chain of my thoughts. Before I can answer, Tom's voice booms from the dining room. "We're dying of hardships in the desert here." It's almost like a shout, barely hidden behind his strained tone, and I can't take it anymore. Sandra squeezes my hand, helping me lift the dessert tray, and we return. I catch Tom's eye, his jaw clenched, his eyes focused on the phone screen, as if everything that matters is happening only there, on this small screen. His face is tense, and there is a nervous rhythm running through his fingers. After the Petersons leave, Tom finally loosens his tie, but his manner of relaxing seems false, forced. "Good night," he says, as if nothing had happened. "Everything is considered." I'm not answering. JN is impressed with Emily's plans for law school, he continues, as if this is important news. But Emily is not going to go to law school. She's applying for art therapy programs, and Tom doesn't understand it. I'm starting to pick up the plates, but you'd know that if you ever really listened to her, I say, cutting off his flow of words. He blinks, not understanding. But I can't keep silent anymore. "Don't start, Vanessa." "Not tonight," he says, and reaches for the phone again, waiting for an important call. A dark tension thickens in the air. But I can't go back to the role where everything was fine. My gaze clings to his face, and I feel something click inside me. Sarah Chin's office looks like a war room, where every document is just another carefully hidden piece of the puzzle that I'm trying to put together. Bank statements and legal papers cover every surface of the table, revealing a new layer of deception that Tom so cleverly hid. I look at the credit card statement and my heart skips a beat. Payments at a jewelry store I've never heard of are dated Valentine's Day. He was busy, Sarah says, highlighting another suspicious transaction that cannot be accidental. A knot is tightening in my throat. Is there anyone else? But this is not our main concern. Sarah puts the document on the table. It blurs in front of my eyes, and at that moment everything for a moment loses its meaning. Home, my home. The one that I spent 23 years turning into a real house, it's gone now. He took out a second mortgage without my knowledge. Sarah explains that it's technically illegal, but he forged my signature. My stomach clenches in horror, but I can't look away. Everything that I built, that I created, now lies in the rubble, just like me. At that moment, the door opens abruptly and Uncle Robert enters the room. His face is grim. He's gone through the SEC paperwork right now. Tom's company is under investigation for financial irregularities. Suddenly, I feel the air in the room getting heavy. He sits down, his eyes never leaving the screen. I'm asking how bad it is. It's bad, he replies, lowering his shoulders heavily. The merger with Peterson was a smokescreen. The whole company was about to explode. My phone buzzes again, and a message from Emily appears on the screen. Mom, where's your dad? He's acting weird, packing up his office stuff. I'll call you back, dear. I catch Sarah's eye and ask quietly, how much time do we have? She is silent, but there is understanding in her eyes, and she answers after a second, hours, maybe. As soon as the announcement of the Securities and Exchange Commission becomes public, he will run. Uncle Robert adds, he will finish with any money he can grab. Sarah begins to collect the documents that we will need to file urgently in court to freeze the accounts and prepare emergency petitions. I look at my phone again, a new message from Emily. Really? He asks about your mother's safe. My blood is running cold in my veins. Mom's jewelry. Sarah turns to me sharply. What kind of jewelry? My mother's collection. Family heirlooms. She kept them in a safe in the First National. My hands are shaking as I write the answer. He's trying to access the safe. He won't be able to. Uncle Robert nods. Helen changed her access rights last month. Only you can open the safe now. I remember my mom's last visit to the bank. How she insisted on updating the documents. She knew. Somehow she knew. Something was wrong, and she could feel it. Mom always felt that something was hiding somewhere under the surface. I hold the phone to my ear and Tom's face appears on the screen. I answer on the speakerphone, his voice sounding deceptively soft. Honey, I need help. My phone rings again, and I look anxiously at the screen, a message from an unknown number. The text is short but instantly poignant. Your mother knew who he was. She left something for you in the back of the box. Don't let him find it first. I put the phone down on the table with trembling hands. Aunt Margaret. I know she should have been with her mom when everything was happening. Was that the last piece of advice she left for me? Sarah interrupts my thoughts. Now, before he figures it out, her voice turns as hard as iron. We must act quickly. We're going to the elevator. I stand and pack my purse, trying to collect my thoughts. What about Emily? I ask, already feeling the tension growing inside me. I'll take her, Uncle Robert says, until everything calms down. We rush to the elevator, and at that moment a message from Tom arrives again. I was trying to protect you from this, he writes. Remember that. I feel a threatening undertone in his words, but underneath it there is not only fear, there is also rage. He stole from my mother, tried to take the last gift she left me, used our daughter as leverage. We're in the car, and I turn to Sarah. Forget about playing defense, I say decisively. I want everything in the house, the bills, his reputation, everything. Sarah, giving me a darkly smiling look, replies, that's what I wanted to hear. When we arrive at the bank, I feel as if the ground is slipping away from under my feet. The safe is in front of me, open and empty except for one envelope. Mom's jewelry, the family history that had been passed down for generations, disappeared. I can't believe what I'm seeing. The bank manager turns awkwardly behind me, explaining that Mr. Mitchell gained access to the safe an hour ago, having all the necessary documents. Forged documents, Sarah corrects sharply. Already on her phone, she quickly dials the number, alerting the authorities. Unable to stand still, I shake her hand. I open the envelope. Mom's letter. My eyes are blurred with tears, but I'm reading. My dear, if you're reading this, Tom came first, but remember, I've always taught you, keep your real treasures close to home. My love, Mom. The phone buzzes again, and Emily's text makes my blood run cold. Dad's at home. He's acting weird. He says we need to talk. Sarah grabs my hand. She's silent, but I'm not listening anymore. I'm calling them, but I can't wait for an answer. I'm going. The road home seems hazy, blurred, and it's like the whole world is blurring around me. When I find them in Tom's office, everything becomes clear and scary. Emily is sitting on a leather sofa, her face expressing anxiety. Tom is standing by the window, still in his office clothes, but now they are disheveled, as if he had not taken them off for days. This is not the Tom I once shared my life with. This man has collapsed, and that familiar lacquer facade is no longer reflected in his eyes. Instead, something else is now being exposed there. Something I barely recognize. A few hours after Tom has left, I find myself in complete silence. Time seems to stretch out, filling the void in the room, but not giving any sense of peace. It seems to me that the air has become thicker, heavier, as if every moment pulls me deeper into this pool. I see an empty door in front of me, behind which the man with whom I shared half of my life was just standing. And now he has become nothing but an empty deception, devoid of any humanity. My life, as it turned out, consisted of these deceptions, false hopes and empty promises. The pearls in my hand seem to be getting heavier, although their physical weight has not changed. It's not just a decoration. It's not just a memory of the mother who wore it on her wedding day. It's a symbol of everything I'm losing, everything he took away from me, what I once thought was mine. The image of the woman who loved me and believed in me was now suffocating in this little stone sparkling in my palm. Mom left me this gift as a reminder that there are things in the world that cannot be lost. But now that I'm holding it in my hands, I realize that all my losses are becoming a reality that needs to be dealt with. I can't just let it all go away. Tom, as expected, left behind only ruins. And now I'm standing in these ruins, trying to get out, trying to figure out what to do next. No matter how he tried to manipulate me, he didn't know that everything inside me had changed a long time ago. His words can no longer deceive me. I've been through it all, and now that I have to make a decision, it doesn't seem so difficult. Justice must prevail. I have to stop him. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? I turn back to the pearls, to what he took from me, and I know that now, in order to protect my family, to restore balance, I will have to do what I have always been afraid of. Face the worst that can happen and act. The very thought of it scares me to the core, but I can't go back. I pick up the phone, dial a number, and this call, as strange as it may sound, becomes the last step in a game in which I can no longer be a passive player. The evening sky outside the window is plunging into a crimson-gray color, and the soft light of street lamps stretches through the glass, illuminating the rooms. I stand in silence, holding a box of recipes, with children's drawings and little notes from my mother. It all seems so ordinary, but now, after what happened, I realize how valuable this legacy is. Tom's secrets and manipulations collapsed, and I was left with what really matters. I remembered how my mother always said, "Don't appreciate things, but appreciate people." Behind every action, behind every step, there is a story that can be both destructive and saving. When she sold the real jewelry to secure Emily's future, she did it not for the sake of wealth, but for the sake of love. She knew that it was caring about the future that mattered, not false symbols created to manipulate. Now that Tom is gone, when he is left in the past, I understand that real wealth is not money, not jewelry, not fictitious promises. This is what we keep in our hearts, what we pass on to our children. Family stories, traditions, little moments that we collect throughout our lives like precious stones. Sarah stands next to me, her gaze full of concern, but also understanding. She knows what I've been through. My eyes meet hers, and in that silence we both realize that everything we need is already here. In my hands is not just a box of recipes, but a symbol of everything that I have to protect. To protect not for the sake of revenge, but for the sake of preserving what is important. What really matters. I close the recipe box, returning it to the shelf. That last gift from Mom is not just papers or valuables, it's a reminder that real strength comes from protecting those we love, from protecting our future, from not destroying, but building. I'm better than good, I think. I am free. It's night outside, and maybe tomorrow will be a new beginning. Emily keeps talking, but I'm barely listening to her words. Something turns over inside me as soon as I begin to realize the gravity of the situation. Not in the money, not in the bills that Mom hid for us. It was all just part of the game. She had known for a long time that one day she would have to play it to the end. And I'm starting to realize that all these years she's been preparing us, protecting us, even if it was in the shadows, even if we didn't know. Mom's wisdom, her planning. It saved us. And now this realization squeezes my chest. I can't help but feel grateful, but also afraid of what lies behind it. Emily is growing up. I see it not only in her look, but also in her confidence, in how she perceives the world. When she talks about long games, I know that she is not just a child, but an extension of the strength that Mom put into us. Emily was and remains her legacy, not only externally, but also internally. I brush the dirt off my hands and join her on the bench, trying to figure out what's going on with us. I found something in Mom's office last night, I say, taking a small envelope out of my pocket. You need to see this. She leans over to me and I hand her the photos. One shows little Emily, with shining eyes, sitting on her mother's lap. Behind them, through the glass of the greenhouse, marigolds are visible. But Tom's look in the background takes me by surprise. He looks confused, scared, as if even then, many years ago, he already knew that the reckoning would come for him. She knew, Emily says softly, and I just nod, realizing how smart she was. Mom understood more than we could have imagined, and even when we were young, she was already thinking about how to warn us against possible traps. At that moment, a car pulls up. Michael, Emily's new boyfriend, appears in the doorway, with a folder full of tax returns. He's just in time for Sunday brunch, but in his hands, as I understand it, are not only the papers for the meal, but also the keys to unraveling what's going on. Michael said that he found something interesting in Tom's old reports, and now, for breakfast, we have to learn about debts and his criminal schemes. Emily, confident and purposeful, approaches Michael, talks to him about long-term plans, about the future that we are now building with her. Behind her gentle appearance lies not only the strength, but also the calm determination of her grandmother. She has the same quiet power that once helped my mother, and now helps her. I see her growing up, and I feel this power passing from generation to generation. At this time, the morning meal appears in the kitchen. I know that one of the envelopes contains a letter from the prosecutor, where Tom is awaiting sentencing. But I don't want to open it. There's no need. Everything is already clear. His excuses and attempts to rewrite our history are no longer important. I drop the letter into the shredder, letting the pieces of paper scatter across the flower beds. How Mom would appreciate this gesture. Fertilizer grew out of the poison, a symbol that decomposition does not always lead to death, and sometimes to new growth. A few minutes later, when we were all sitting at breakfast, Michael spread out the documents in front of us. Aunt Margaret pours coffee, and Uncle Robert, always serious and focused, flips through financial reports, marking important points in the margins. But when he sees the highlighted section, his face changes. "Look at this," Michael says, pointing to the numbers we hadn't noticed before. The pattern is much deeper than we thought. There are other participants, bigger players. I feel a shiver running down my spine. Some kind of indefinite force is growing inside me. We already knew that Tom was not alone. But now that we're starting to see how many more hidden connections there are behind this, I understand. This is not just a victory. We've just started to figure out what's at the core.